Hello and welcome to another video. I hope you're having a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas, as it is officially the Christmas season now, and what better way to celebrate the Christmas holiday than talking about some of our favorite Christmas movies, an absolute staple of the holiday season. So in this video, I'm going to share my top 10 favorite Christmas movies of all time. Welcome once again, my name is Austin and this channel is all about helping you to dig deeper and go further to better understand faith and film and everything that's in between. If that sounds exciting to you, make sure you click the subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any future content. Now actually, if you remember, last year right around this same time, I did a top 5 Christmas movies list, and I kind of unintentionally rushed it and put it out pretty quick. And not that the video itself was bad, but I wasn't overly thrilled with my picks as soon as I went back and started watching through the video. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to correct this next year. So this year, not only are we doing a top 5, but we're doing a top 10 favorite Christmas movies. So I'm going to share my 10 favorite Christmas movies from 10 down to 1. And quick little plug for next week. If you enjoyed this video and talking about Christmas movies, I'm going to recommend 5 less conventional Christmas movies, something more unique that you can check out this holiday season if you have not seen so already. It's going to be a really fun list and a really good time. So without further ado, let's start my list of my 10 favorite Christmas movies. Starting things off, we have what I think is somewhat controversial, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Now, I was the perfect age for this one. I grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, so this is the main Grinch movie that I grew up watching. I definitely watched the animated classic as well and have a ton of love and nostalgia for that one. We'll kind of talk about it in a little bit, but I really do enjoy this one. I really like Jim Carrey. Again, I grew up kind of on his hot streak of the 90s, early 2000s, so I really enjoy this one. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, so it definitely cracks my top 10 list for favorite Christmas movies. Next, another, I think, somewhat controversial pick, we have The Polar Express. Now, for some reason, this movie gets a lot of hate these days. I'm not sure why. I'm kind of sure why. I've kind of seen some arguments on it, and I guess it makes sense, but at the same time, I have tons of nostalgia for this one. I grew up watching it. This is one of the first movies I remember watching in the theaters, so that has very prominent memories for me that I really enjoy looking back on. I still remember seeing the train coming flying at the screen in 3D. It was my first 3D movie experience. So again, I have tons of nostalgia for this one, but I also think it's a really good story of a little boy learning kind of what he values and what's important to him and learning to believe in something. But I think it's really cool, really good themes as well on friendship and all that kind of stuff with the children on the train. There's tons of really cool moments. There's some really fun songs along the way, specifically the song about hot chocolate. I love that one. So really cool, really interesting kind of interpretation of things at the North Pole, of like an almost realistic interpretation of what the North Pole would be like with Christmas and how it functions and all that kind of stuff. Really fun one. So I have a lot of fun with this one. I enjoy it. So it definitely cracks my top 10 in 9th place. Next, in 8th place, we have one that I don't have in my collection quite yet, but I do have the first one, so I'll show that really briefly, of the Santa Claus. I grew up on the Santa Claus movies, specifically the Santa Claus 2, so I do have one in my collection right now. I do need to get 2 and 3 as well, but the Santa Claus 2 is definitely one of my favorite Christmas movies. Tons of nostalgia for it. I love Tim Allen in this movie. I think it's one of his best roles and performances. There's some really interesting kind of family dynamics that we get with this movie, as well as, again, another kind of interesting interpretation of how the North Pole would function, and then even with Tim Allen's Santa Claus character leaving this robot Santa Claus in charge kind of thing. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of whimsical nature to it. There's a lot of fun comedy, some interesting drama, some really cool themes on family that I really appreciate as well. And when you put any kind of family themes in a Christmas movie, I feel like that in itself is a staple, but especially family themes in a Christmas movie, I'm gonna love it. So I love the first 2 Santa Claus movies, but I actually watched the Santa Claus 2 first and most often as compared to the original and even the third one. So even though in some cases I might like certain aspects of the first Santa Claus movie better, but I have so much nostalgia and appreciation and love for the second Santa Claus movie. That's my pick for my 8th favorite Christmas movie. Next, in 7th place, we have Home Alone 2. Now, the Home Alone movies, the first and second one that is, are absolutely in my household, at least my household growing up, and still to this day, as I have my own household, staples of the Christmas season. I love both of these Home Alone movies. You will be seeing Home Alone 1, spoiler warning, a little later on this list, but Home Alone 2 is just as great. And yes, it does suffer from essentially the same plot in a different location, few things here and there swapped out, but it's still done so well. It's got a great story. It's so charming and fun. Getting to see Kevin kind of a little bit more out of his element rather than in his house defending it and in the big city of New York. Not much beats New York City at Christmas time when it comes to Christmas movies. So as much as I love the first Home Alone, I do really like the New York City Christmas vibes that this one puts off, seeing the iconic locations, all that kind of stuff. It's a really fun one. So again, even though it has a lot of similar aspects to the first one, both Home Alone movies hit it pretty high on my 10 favorite Christmas movies of all time, and Home Alone 2 will take the 7th spot. Next, we have a little bit of a cheat here. Now, obviously, there are more than just Christmas movies to watch on the Christmas holiday season. There's also tons of Christmas specials. So, in a special 6th slot for this one, I'm going to just kind of plug all of the Christmas holiday specials here. So I have the Charlie Brown Holiday Collection, so obviously out of this one it would be the Merry Christmas Charlie Brown special here. And then I have the Christmas special collection that has Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. There is the Little Drummer Boy in here too, which I have a little, I never liked that one quite as much growing up, but it's still a classic. And then I do need to get the How the Grinch Stole Christmas animated one. Like I mentioned, I love the Jim Carrey one, but I also just have such love and adoration for these holiday specials. My parents grew up watching these on cable once a year, and then we actually had these on DVD growing up, and now I have the Blu-rays for these. So kind of cool to see how this has changed and kind of evolved over my childhood and moving into adulthood. But these Christmas holiday specials are still a huge part of my life every year for Christmas, and I definitely plan on keeping that tradition going. The next two picks are really interesting because both of these movies, yes, they're in the top 5, being 5th and 4th slot, but they're ones that I've only have seen now for 1 to 3 years, I would say. And so taking the 5th slot is going to be It's a Wonderful Life. So again, like I just said, this is one that I've only I've had this in my collection for about a year now, and I've only known and seen this movie for a few years. This is not a movie we watched growing up for some reason. I'm not sure why. I know my parents really enjoy it, but I never saw this one growing up, and I didn't see it until I was an adult. But I absolutely love it. I'm not a huge classics like old 40s, 50s, 60s movies guy, but this movie is absolutely incredible. It's definitely one of the best movies ever made, one of the best Christmas movies. There's an amazing story spreading years, and it's really cool just to kind of see all of this throughout this life. Jon Stewart is great in this one. I love him in this role, as well as the rest of the supporting cast. There's some really interesting characters, lots of cool stuff, and it's just really neat to see all of this come full circle at the end for the Christmas holiday. So it's a perfect lead-in to Christmas. I love the story. I love its themes on community and family, all those things. It's so neat to see themes like this in a film, especially so far removed from this time period. It's just really cool kind of looking through this telescope back in time, and it's a beautiful movie. Next, this is the 4th slot, and again, one that I've only having seen this movie for about a year or so now. I love this movie so much. Unfortunately, it does not have a physical release because it is a Netflix original movie, and it's not very common for Netflix originals to get physical releases. So this is probably one of my top picks for movies that I wish would get a physical release, and that is Netflix's Klaus. Now, this is a movie that is a really cool animated feature film. It actually won at least one award, I think, or I believe it was nominated for Best Animated Film back a couple years ago when it was initially released. So I loved the way this movie kind of deconstructs almost Christmas a little bit in a really interesting way. Again, it's a family animated movie, but it deals with some really interesting heavy themes when it comes to loss, depression, and just anxiety, all these different things. It's done in a really interesting way. The story is really cool. We kind of get to see this journey of this guy who's a mailman for this worldwide mail company, basically, that his father owns. It's like an empire. And so he is kind of a failure in that he just takes advantage of all his father's resources and just kind of squanders it. And so his father sends him away to this impossible task of this one town to start a mail business there. And so he is tasked with this, basically banished there, and this rundown old town. Everyone's grumpy. There's a feud between two halves of the town that are constantly fighting each other. They despise each other, and he kind of moves there, and he's this kind-hearted person who's genuine and tries to bring them back together. There's also this man who's kind of somewhat Santa Claus-esque, and he kind of helps to encourage him along the way with all these different things. So there's a really cool, really neat story here. There's absolutely beautiful animation, some of the best I've ever seen. It's a very interesting 2D/3D style, whereas it's 2D animation, but it is drawn and animated to look like 3D animation. So it's absolutely gorgeous. I love the animation for this one. I so badly want a physical release of this movie, but until then, I'll just put a digital poster up here for now, showing some images along the way. But this is my 4th favorite Christmas movie of all time. If you've not seen this one, and you have access to a Netflix, or you want to set up a free trial, this is one you should definitely watch this holiday season. I absolutely adore it. All right, we have reached the top 3. Now, these top 3 are ones that are must-watch every single year in my household for the Christmas season. And they're absolute classics. You're going to know probably all 3 of these because they're some of the best of the best. And first, in the 3rd slot, we have Will Ferrell in Elf. This movie was an instant classic upon its release in, I believe, 2003. I know for sure it was early 2000s, but this movie is incredible. It's done with so much love, so much genuine work. Everyone was so passionate about doing this movie, and I love it. There's a really interesting documentary about the making of this one in the Netflix series, The Movies That Made Us, about Elf, that really breaks down kind of the journey of this movie to get made. Really interesting, really cool stuff. Made me love it even more. This is by far one of the best lightning in a bottle movie experiences. Everything about this is great. Will Ferrell's perfect in the role. His performance, probably one of his best. Really great story about family, Christmas. It's so funny. I love this movie. This is definitely a great way to start off for the top 3. I also think it's amazing that this is a Jon Favreau movie. He made this and then about 5 or so years later got handed the Iron Man movie. So really cool just to kind of see his evolution of filmography. I think this is either his directorial debut or one of his first directed movies. So it's an incredible start if it is his first directed feature. And I think he's gone high above ever since then. I mean, this guy made a Christmas classic, kicked off the MCU, and brought Star Wars back to life for so many people with Mandalorian. So awesome film by an awesome director. Next, and yeah, I told you you'd be seeing Home Alone on here, we have the first Home Alone movie. Yes, both Home Alone movies are in my top 10. I just have tons of nostalgia for both of these movies. We watch these every year growing up in my house, and I love this one. So this one is so cool because, like I said, this one started it all. There's amazing John Williams score, John Hughes writing this one, Chris Columbus directing it, the perfect, in a way, trifecta, because Chris Columbus makes great movies, John Williams makes great music, and John Hughes does incredible writing. So I love this movie so much, and again, it's an absolute staple. I just watched it last week with a group of friends at our church, and it still holds up all these years later. I love this movie. This is one that I will continue watching and sharing with my family for years to come. An absolute tradition every year. There's not much more I can say about this movie that's not been said. It's great. So much about it is perfect. I love it. Finally, in the number 1 slot, we have the quintessential and probably best Christmas movie ever made, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. This movie is absolutely incredible. I love it so much. I grew up watching the TV version of this movie because there's a few things that aren't entirely family friendly in this one, but I love this movie. There's tons of fun. There's tons of heart. It's one of the funniest movies in my opinion. I love all of the humor in it, all the Cousin Eddie stuff, Clark Griswold's sense of humor, but I just love his heart and his desire to have the happiest Christmas for his family, and despite all of the trouble that comes with his family, his in-laws, all this stuff, all the shenanigans, it's great. It's so much fun. There's so many laughs, and I adore this movie. I think it's great. So a movie that has been a part of my life for quite a long time and will continue to probably be my favorite Christmas movie until the end of time. So I love this movie so much. So that wraps up all 10 of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed this list as I kind of made a course correction from last year. I think my Lampoon's Christmas Vacation movie was actually a lot lower on the list last year, and I believe Home Alone was at #1, but after some thinking and kind of reworking through this list over the past year, I couldn't deny National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation its #1 slot, as much as I love Home Alone. So that's kind of my quintessential top 10 favorite Christmas movies of all time. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, make sure you share some of your favorite Christmas movies in the comments down below. I hope you're having a great holiday season and an upcoming very Merry Christmas. Again, I will see you next week when we talk about 5 less conventional but still really fun Christmas movies. So I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. See you later.